I always thought our life together was like a well-oiled machine. My wife Jessica and I had been married for 10 years and we had a beautiful son named Tyler. Everything seemed perfect on the surface. We had a nice house in a good neighborhood, both had stable jobs, and we even had a vacation home we used every summer. But lately, things felt a little off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was an underlying tension, a disconnection that had crept in. At first, I chalked it up to the usual stressors of life, work, bills, and parenting. Jess had been more secretive with her phone, often texting late at night with a frown on her face. She'd also started spending more time running errands or hanging out with friends. I didn't want to be that husband who jumps to conclusions without evidence, but as weeks turned into months, my gut started churning. One evening, I returned home early from work, anticipating a romantic dinner. Instead, I found Jess sitting in the living room, her phone tucked away but her demeanor all wrong. I tried to engage her, but she was distant, distracted, and more concerned about the dishes than our conversation. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but the feeling wouldn't go away. It wasn't until I noticed a new contact in her phone, Jake, tutor, that the pieces began to fall into place. We had hired a tutor for Tyler to help him with math, and I remember Jess mentioning Jake a few times, but it was always in passing. I wasn't entirely comfortable with their frequent study sessions, especially when they started stretching late into the evenings. The more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. The turning point came a few days later when I decided to snoop. I hate that I did it, but I felt like I needed to know the truth. I found Jess's phone lying face down on the kitchen counter, and without giving it a second thought, I picked it up. A quick glance at her messages sent my heart plummeting. There were texts between Jess and Jake that were filled with flirty banter, but it was the last one that struck me like a punch to the gut. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll make sure no one else is home." I felt sick. My world turned upside down and an icy rage took hold of me. This was not some innocent tutor-student relationship. Jess was having an affair. I couldn't breathe. I dropped the phone on the counter and it clattered loudly, snapping her out of her stupor. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. "Your phone," I spat, my hands trembling. "You might want to check your messages." Her face drained of color and I could see the gears in her mind turning as she tried to concoct an excuse. "Stop lying to me, Jess," I said, the anger boiling over. "I know about you and Jake. I saw the messages. You're sleeping with him." The look of shock on her face was almost comical, but the anger burning inside me wouldn't let me laugh. She went into damage control mode, her eyes darting around as if searching for a way out. "It's not what you think." She cried, but the desperation in her voice was palpable. "We were just talking about Tyler's progress, I swear." I scoffed. "Talking? Is that what you call it? Because that's not what it looks like to me." She started to backpedal, claiming she was confused and didn't know how things had gotten out of hand. Her explanations were a whirlwind of excuses that sounded rehearsed and pathetic. It was clear she was only concerned about the fallout, not the betrayal itself. Emotionally, I was in turmoil. I had gone from disbelief to rage in a matter of minutes. How could she do this to me, to us? As we squared off in our kitchen, I felt like a stranger to her, a mere pawn in her deceitful game. I had always considered myself a supportive husband, but in that moment I felt like the fool she had made me. After what felt like hours of back and forth, I finally said, "I can't do this anymore, Jess. You've crossed a line I can't ignore." Her expression shifted from feigned innocence to anger. "You're being ridiculous, you're overreacting." But I knew I was. I knew I had to make a decision, and it wouldn't be one I would take lightly. As I left the kitchen, my mind raced with thoughts of revenge and how I could turn the tables. I couldn't let this slide. She needed to understand the consequences of her actions. Tyler's future was at stake, and I realized I had to protect him from this toxic environment. This wasn't just about my pain, it was about setting an example for him. I decided then that I would ensure his bright future, even if it meant cutting Jessica out of our lives completely. With determination burning in my chest, I began to plot my next steps, knowing they would shake the foundation of our family. This was the beginning of a whirlwind that would change everything. The days following the confrontation were a blur. Jessica kept trying to talk to me, to reach out as if to mend the broken pieces, but all I felt was anger mixed with a heavy dose of betrayal. I didn't want to hear her excuses or apologies. I had made up my mind. I was done with her manipulations. In the weeks that followed, I focused on Tyler. He was my priority, and I needed to think clearly for his sake. I started researching elite schools in our area, places that would challenge him academically and set him up for success. It felt good to redirect my energy into something constructive, something that could potentially turn this disaster into a blessing for my son. I visited several schools, discussing their curriculums and extracurricular activities. I wanted the best for Tyler, and I was no longer willing to let Jessica's actions dictate our lives. The thought of him attending a prestigious school, surrounded by ambitious peers, gave me a sense of purpose. It felt like a way to reclaim control over my life and our future. I also took the opportunity to dig deeper into the situation with Jessica. I found out more about Jake, the tutor. He was a recent college graduate, charming, and more than a little too interested in our family. I could picture him as the type who would swoop in with his good intentions, while secretly enjoying the thrill of the affair. That just fueled the fire within me. After a few weeks of silence between us, I finally sat down with Jessica to discuss Tyler's schooling. The tension was palpable as I broke the news to her. "I've decided to enroll Tyler in a new school," I said, keeping my tone steady. Her eyes widened. "A new school? Why? He's doing fine." "Fine isn't enough. He deserves the best, and that means cutting out distractions like you," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. "Cutting me out?" she exclaimed, incredulous. "You can't be serious. I'm his mother. And you think that makes it okay to betray your family, to tear this family apart for some fling? You've shown me who you really are, Jess." She opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand to stop her. "No more excuses. I'm moving forward for Tyler's future, and that means I won't allow your influence to cloud his potential." The confrontation was exhausting, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I had made my decision, and it felt liberating. I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one where I could focus on what truly mattered. As the enrollment process began, I spent even more time with Tyler. He was excited and curious about the change, completely unaware of the turmoil brewing between his parents. I took him to tour the school, and I could see the spark in his eyes as he explored the campus. The teachers were enthusiastic, and the environment was filled with ambition, a stark contrast to the tension at home. When I finally submitted the application, I felt a sense of victory. I was taking control of my life and making decisions that would benefit Tyler. But I still couldn't shake the feeling of dread that came with knowing how Jessica would react when she found out he was leaving the school she had so fiercely defended. Her anger was palpable when I told her the news. "You can't just take him away from me," she shouted, her voice rising. "He needs me. This is my decision too." I stood my ground. "No, it's not. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences. Tyler deserves better than to be caught in the fallout of your mistakes." Over the next few days, I began to see the changes in our household. Jessica attempted to be more present, but the tension hung in the air like a thick fog. I saw her trying to engage with Tyler, but it felt forced, almost desperate. It was like she was trying to win him over while knowing that she was losing me. The day of the enrollment meeting arrived. I took Tyler with me, and as we walked through the school halls, I felt a mix of hope and determination. This was a new beginning for both of us. I sat down with the admissions officer, and as we discussed Tyler's placement, I realized how much control I finally had over our future. I couldn't help but think about Jessica and how her world would soon collapse around her. She had made her choice, and now she would have to deal with the consequences. After we finished the meeting, Tyler and I walked back to the car, and he looked up at me with those bright eyes. "Dad, I'm excited about this school. Will I make new friends?" I smiled and ruffled his hair. "Absolutely, buddy. You're going to do great things there." And I meant it. I had a plan, and it was working. But it was also just the beginning. I hadn't forgotten about Jessica or the way she had betrayed me. The revenge I had in mind was only just around the corner. and I needed to make sure it hit hard enough to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. As I drove home, I felt a sense of satisfaction. I was doing what needed to be done, and I couldn't wait to see how the next chapter of our lives would unfold. I would ensure my son had the future he deserved, even if it meant tearing down the life I had built with Jessica. The weeks that followed Tyler's enrollment in the new school were a mixture of relief and tension. Jessica's attempts to regain some semblance of control over our family dynamic were growing increasingly desperate. She tried to put on a brave face, but I could see the cracks forming. Her facade was crumbling, and I was ready to push her over the edge. Despite the chaos at home, I focused on Tyler and his new school. He was thriving. I noticed his enthusiasm for learning was contagious, and he was making friends quickly. I felt a surge of pride each time he shared stories about his day, his excitement infectious. It was everything I had hoped for him. I was finally able to give him a future unclouded by his mother's mistakes. Jessica, on the other hand, was a mess. She tried to play the role of the supportive parent, but I could tell she was losing it. Late-night arguments turned into cold silences, and I could feel the tension in every room of our house. At times, I caught her staring at me with a look of anger mixed with confusion. I knew she was struggling to accept that I had moved on and that she was losing her grip on our family. One night, after putting Tyler to bed, I found Jessica sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. I could tell she was stewing over something. As I walked past her, she suddenly snapped. "You're acting like you're some kind of hero, but you're just being a selfish jerk," she spat, her voice laced with venom. I stopped in my tracks, turning to face her. "Selfish? You're the one who decided to cheat on me. You're the one who put yourself first. I'm doing this for Tyler. You've shown that you can't be trusted." Her eyes narrowed and a wicked smile crossed her face. "You think you can just take him away from me and that I'll let you? You don't know what you're getting yourself into." I felt a chill run down my spine. What's that supposed to mean? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't underestimate me, Dave. This isn't over. You think you're the one in control. Just wait." My heart raced. I didn't know what she was capable of, but I knew I had to be prepared. I had no intention of letting her intimidate me or waver in my plan. I was committed to ensuring Tyler would always come first, and Jessica's threats only fueled my resolve. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to observe her behavior. It was clear she was spiraling. I noticed her spending more time on her phone, always texting or taking calls in hushed tones. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was up to something. I had to find out what she was hiding. One afternoon, while Tyler was at school, I decided to do some digging. I took a seat at the dining table with her laptop, and after a few minutes of scrolling through her browsing history, my heart sank. I found messages with Jake, both flirty and menacing. It appeared that she was still in contact with him, and he was encouraging her to fight back against me, to manipulate the situation further. I couldn't believe it. I had given her too much credit, thinking she would back off after our confrontation. What was she planning? I felt my blood boil, but I quickly calmed myself. This was just more evidence for my case against her. I needed to stay focused and remain one step ahead. That evening, I confronted her again, but this time with the evidence in hand. "I found your messages with Jake. You're still in contact with him after everything that happened. What kind of mother are you?" I said, my voice steady but filled with indignation. She feigned ignorance, her face morphing into an expression of outrage. "You're invading my privacy. You have no right to do that." "Privacy?" I shot back. "You forfeited that right when you decided to cheat on me and put our son's well-being at risk. You're still trying to play both sides here, and I won't let you." Her face flushed with anger, and she stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "You think you can intimidate me? I'll fight you for Tyler. If I have to. You're making a huge mistake, Dave." I could see the desperation in her eyes, and it only fueled my determination. She was grasping at straws, and I needed to push back. "Go ahead, Jess, fight me, but know that I will expose you for who you really are." I stepped closer, my resolve unwavering. "You think this is a game? You're underestimating what I'm willing to do to protect my son." The confrontation ended with her storming off to our bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I felt a renewed sense of purpose. She could threaten me all she wanted, but I was ready for whatever she had planned. It was time to devise a strategy that would ensure she could no longer manipulate the situation. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, documenting everything I could find about her behavior and her communications with Jake. I wanted to create a record of her actions to safeguard my position. I also started speaking to a family lawyer, exploring my options should it come to a custody battle. I knew I had to be prepared for anything she could throw at me. As I set my plans in motion, I couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment. I was no longer just a victim of her betrayal. I was taking control of my life and my son's future. I was ready to face whatever consequences came my way, and I would protect Tyler at all costs. Jessica had awakened a side of me that I didn't know existed, one that was willing to fight tooth and nail for what I believed in. The stakes were high, and I wouldn't back down. I could feel the storm brewing, and I was more than ready to weather it. With my strategy in place, I felt a surge of confidence as I prepared for the inevitable fallout from Jessica's continued betrayal. The tension in our home was palpable, but I was determined to stay focused on Tyler's well-being, even as the emotional landscape around us grew increasingly volatile. I began to document everything. I recorded instances of Jessica's erratic behavior, her late-night phone calls, and any interactions she had with Jake. It was important to have a clear picture of her actions, not only for my own peace of mind, but also to build a case. If it came to that, I even reached out to some of Tyler's teachers at his new school to discuss his adjustment and progress. They were impressed with him, and it felt like I was finally fighting the right battles. Jessica didn't seem to notice my newfound resolve at first. She remained focused on maintaining her facade of normalcy, trying to engage with Tyler as if everything was perfectly fine. I watched her interactions carefully, noting the forced smiles and the way she would occasionally slip back into her old ways of dismissing him. She was losing her grip, and I felt a mix of pity and anger each time I witnessed her attempts to manipulate our child. One evening, as Tyler was at a school event, I decided to confront Jessica again. I needed to put an end to her games. I found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her expression unreadable. "Jess, we need to talk," I said, keeping my tone even. She looked up, her brow furrowing. "About what? You think we can just keep rehashing the same conversation?" I stepped closer, my voice firm. "No, we're not rehashing anything. I'm done letting you play both sides. I found more messages between you and Jake. You need to stop this nonsense. It's affecting Tyler." Her expression shifted from annoyance to irritation. "You're being controlling. You can't just dictate how I live my life. Jake is a friend who has been supportive during this rough patch." "Supportive? You mean supportive like a lover?" I challenged, feeling the anger boiling within me. "You're lying to yourself, Jess. You need to face the truth. You think you have all the answers. You don't get to decide what's best for me," she shot back, her voice rising. "You're making a mistake if you think I won't fight for my family." I took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. "This isn't about what you want anymore. This is about what's best for Tyler. He deserves a stable environment free from your drama. If you want to see him grow up in chaos, that's on you, not me." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the anger boiling beneath the surface. "You're underestimating me, Dave. I won't let you take him away without a fight." I met her gaze with a steely determination. "You're the one who's lost sight of what matters. You've put your own desires above our son's well-being. I won't let you drag Tyler into your mess." Our confrontation ended with her storming off again, and I felt a sense of satisfaction at having stood my ground. I knew she would retaliate, but I was ready for it. The game had changed, and I was no longer the submissive husband she could manipulate. As nights turned into days, I continued to gather evidence and strengthen my case. I started documenting her behavior with timestamps, capturing her patterns of deceit. I felt like I was preparing for a battle, and I was determined to win. Then came the unexpected twist. One evening, as I was going through some papers in my home office, I received a text message from an unknown number. Looking at the screen, I felt my heart race. It read, "I know what's going on between Jessica and Jake. I have proof. We should talk." I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Was this a trap, Or was it someone genuinely trying to help? After a moment of consideration, I replied cautiously, asking for more information. The response came quickly. Meet me at the park tomorrow at 3 p.m. I can't discuss it over text. Curiosity and concern battled within me. Could this be someone from the school? A parent? I decided I had to go. I couldn't ignore the potential lead, especially if it meant getting more evidence against Jessica's affair. The next day, I arrived at the park early, feeling a mix of anticipation and unease. I scanned the area looking for anyone who might fit the bill. After a few minutes, a woman approached me. She appeared to be in her late 30s with a serious expression on her face. "Are you Dave?" she asked, her voice low. I nodded, intrigued. "And you are?" "Lisa, I'm a parent at Tyler's new school. I've seen Jessica with Jake, and I think you need to know what I know." I felt a rush of adrenaline. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, glancing around to ensure we weren't overheard. "I've seen them together several times, and it didn't look like just tutoring to me. There's more." As she shared what she had witnessed, my heart sank. Further, apparently she had seen them at a coffee shop, laughing and flirting, and another time at a restaurant late at night. The evidence was mounting, and I felt a mix of disbelief and rage at Jessica's audacity. "I have pictures," Lisa continued. "I can send them to you. I think you deserve to know the truth." I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "Thank you. I appreciate you coming forward. This means a lot." As we parted ways, I felt a renewed sense of determination. With this new information and evidence, I was ready to take decisive action. I could now confront Jessica with undeniable proof of her deceit. The pieces were falling into place, and every bit of evidence brought me closer to my goal. I could feel the storm brewing, and I was prepared to unleash it when the time was right. I wouldn't let Jessica manipulate me or Tyler any longer. Things were about to change, and I was ready to see it through. With the new evidence in hand, I felt like I was armed and ready for battle. Lisa had sent me several pictures of Jessica and Jake together, clearly enjoying each other's company. They were not just casual meetings. They looked like a couple caught in the throes of an intimate affair. My heart thudded in my chest as I thought about the confrontation that awaited Jessica. I spent the next few days preparing myself mentally for the showdown. I kept replaying the scenario in my head, going over my lines, reminding myself that I had the upper hand now. The emotional turmoil I had faced in the days after discovering Jessica's infidelity was now replaced with a sense of resolve. I was no longer the passive husband caught unaware. I was ready to stand my ground and fight for my son. When the day finally arrived, I chose my moment carefully. Tyler was spending the afternoon with his friends, giving me the perfect opportunity to confront Jessica without distractions. I could sense the tension in the air as she returned home, still wearing that forced smile she had perfected over the last few months. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her voice cheery but lacking sincerity. "It was fine, Jess. We need to talk," I replied, my tone serious. She looked at me, her expression shifting from feigned happiness to concern. "About what?" "About you and Jake," I said, my voice steady. "I have something you need to see." I pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures Lisa had sent me. Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment I saw genuine shock cross her face before it morphed into anger. "How dare you?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. "You have no right to invade my privacy like this." "Invade your privacy?" I countered, my voice rising with indignation. "You've been sleeping with our son's tutor while pretending everything is normal. You're a liar, Jess. This isn't just about privacy, this is about betrayal." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "You've shown me your true colors, and I won't let you manipulate me anymore. You've jeopardized everything for this affair. Those pictures don't mean anything. You don't understand the context." She yelled, desperation creeping into her voice. "Context? You think I care about your pathetic excuses? You've put your desires above our family, and that's unforgivable," I shot back. "I'm not going to let you drag Tyler into this mess any longer." Jessica's facade was crumbling. I could see the panic rising within her as she tried to collect her thoughts. "You're overreacting. We can work this out. We can go to couples therapy. Just don't make any rash decisions." "Rash decisions? You've already made those for both of us," I replied, my voice firm. I've consulted a lawyer and I'm prepared to take action to protect Tyler. If it comes to a custody battle, I have no problem exposing you for who you are." Her face turned pale, and for a moment I thought I might have finally gotten through to her. But then her anger flared again and she crossed her arms defensively. "You think you can just take him from me? I won't let you. Let me. You've already done the hard work of pushing me away. I'm just cleaning up the mess you've made," I retorted, feeling the adrenaline rush through me. "I'm doing this for Tyler. He deserves better than this toxic environment." Jessica, unable to hold back any longer, unleashed a torrent of accusations. "You're a hypocrite. You acted like perfect husband while I was right here. You didn't even notice I was unhappy." I stepped closer, forcing her to meet my gaze. "You were unhappy because of your choices, not mine. I've always been here for you. You chose to betray my trust. You chose to put your needs above our son's well-being." The anger in the room was electric, and for a moment I thought she might lash out physically. But instead she fell silent, tears filling her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I was lost. I thought I could find happiness. I never wanted to hurt you or Tyler." But as I looked at her, I could see the truth in her eyes. She was still trying to paint herself as the victim. "Jess, you need to understand that your choices have consequences. I won't let you drag Tyler down with you. He deserves a stable environment, one where he's not caught in the middle of your mess." As the silence lingered, I could feel the weight of our shattered relationship hanging heavily in the air. It was clear that she was still grappling with the reality of what she had done. I knew this was a turning point and I had to hold my ground. "I'm moving forward, Jess," I said firmly, my voice resonating with authority. "You need to figure out where you stand. I'm not going to continue living in this toxic cycle." Jessica turned away, her shoulders shaking as she fought back tears. The once strong and confident woman I had married was now a shell of her former self. I felt a pang of sadness for what we had lost, but I couldn't let that cloud my judgment. "I hope you find a way to be happy," I said softly, trying to inject a bit of compassion into the moment. "But it won't be with Jake, and it won't be at the expense of our son's future." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her to process the reality of her actions. The confrontation had been emotionally charged, but I felt a sense of liberation. I was finally standing up for myself and for Tyler. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to face whatever came next. As I settled into my own space later that evening, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. I was doing what was right for my son, and I was prepared to fight for him. Whatever it took, I would ensure that Tyler had the future he deserved, free from the chaos of Jessica's choices. I was ready for the next steps in this battle, and I wasn't backing down. The days that followed the confrontation with Jessica were filled with tension. She was determined to regain control, but the dynamic had shifted. I had stood my ground, and the air between us crackled with the unspoken acknowledgement of the fracture in our relationship. Jessica attempted to engage with Tyler as if nothing had happened. She'd ask about his day, bake cookies, and turn on the charm, but I could see through her facade. I watched as she tried to play the doting mother while secretly plotting her next move. I remained vigilant, knowing that any sign of weakness could lead her to manipulate the situation further. Meanwhile, I continued to focus on Tyler's well-being. He was thriving at his new school, and I made sure to engage him in meaningful discussions about his interests. We started going to the park together more often, indulging in activities that allowed us to bond. I felt a renewed sense of purpose as I navigated fatherhood solo, determined to be the support he needed. However, I also knew that Jessica wasn't going to give up without a fight. She started reaching out to friends and family, trying to paint herself as the victim in all of this. I could hear her name being mentioned in hushed tones during conversations. It made me furious. How dare she manipulate our friends into believing she was wronged? The reality was that she had chosen her path, and now she had to face the consequences. One evening, as I sat at home with Tyler, Jessica came into the living room with a new tactic. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice surprisingly calm. I looked at her, unsure of what to expect. "About what?" I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "About Tyler. I want to make things right," she said, her eyes earnest. "I've been thinking. I want to be a better mother. I want to show him I care." I felt a mix of skepticism and a glimmer of hope. And how do you plan to do that? Just pretend nothing happened. I know I messed up, she admitted, her voice softening. But I want to make amends. I want to be involved in his life. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I can be a responsible parent. I studied her face, searching for sincerity. And what about Jake? She hesitated, her expression faltering. I'll cut ties with him, I promise. I know that was a huge mistake. I felt a pang of uncertainty. Could I really trust her? I wanted to believe that she was genuine, but the scars from her betrayal still lingered, and I wasn't ready to let my guard down completely. I will need proof of your commitment, I said firmly. Therapy is a start, but I expect you to show us through your actions. Tyler deserves a stable environment, and if you want to be involved, you must respect that. Her face brightened slightly, and she nodded. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. I want to be part of his life again. The conversation felt like a small step forward, but I was still cautious. I knew that trust would take time, and perhaps it would never fully return. As she left the room, I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. Over the next few months, Jessica worked to rebuild her relationship with Tyler. She committed to therapy and began attending family events, making more of an effort to engage with him. Tyler was receptive, excited to have his mother back in his life, and I had to admit that it was somewhat heartwarming to see them interact positively. But I remained on guard, watching for any signs of her old patterns. I knew better than to let my emotions cloud my judgment. Whenever thoughts of the past crept in, I would remind myself of the reasons I had taken the steps I did. The turning point came during a school parent-teacher meeting. As we sat together discussing Tyler's progress, I couldn't help but notice how engaged Jessica was. She asked questions, took notes, and seemed genuinely invested in what the teacher had to say. It was a stark contrast to the chaotic energy that had previously engulfed our family. When we left the meeting, Tyler beamed with pride. "Mom, did you see how well I'm doing? I told you I'd get better at math," he exclaimed, his enthusiasm contagious. Jessica smiled at him, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the mother I had married. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. We're going to keep working on this together," she said, pulling him into an embrace. It was a delicate balance, and I knew I had to keep my distance. Jessica was trying, but I still held reservations. I wanted to believe she could change, but I was not willing to risk Tyler's well-being again. Trust would take time. As the months turned into a year, Jessica continued to show progress. Our relationship became more of a partnership focused on co-parenting. We established boundaries that allowed us to communicate about Tyler without falling back into old patterns. Looking back, I realized that while my heart had been shattered, I had emerged stronger. I learned that it was possible to protect myself and my child while still allowing space for growth and change. I had fought for Tyler's future and navigated the chaos with determination. As I reflected on the journey, I felt a sense of closure. I had learned the value of resilience and the importance of prioritizing family, even in the darkest of times. I would always encourage Tyler to thrive and pursue his dreams, ensuring that he knew he was loved and supported, no matter what. In the end, I found solace in knowing that I had taken the right steps, not just for myself, but for my son. I was moving forward, and while the scars of betrayal would linger, they would also serve as a reminder of the strength I had found within myself. Life would go on, and I was ready to embrace the future with renewed hope.